Welcome into PrepAquatics.com. I'm Skylar King. As always, you can email me, Skylar at PrepAquatics.com. You can follow me on Twitter at SkylarPrep. Sorry about the week off last week. Ended up having a work thing get in the way of getting the opportunity to do a recording. But we're back to, in really the kind of the doldrum 3 weeks of the season. There wasn't a really big meets last weekend, no huge meets this weekend. Kind of between that Nutra Relay weekend and the first weekend of conferences, it's really more about just teams tinkering, especially in a year like this where so many teams do have lineup questions to figure out. Glenbrook South probably less so than everybody else. But everybody else really, is in a spot where they need to decide who's going 3 relays, and if you're not going 3 relays, which relays are you loading? And that's something that, again, I the biggest team I think about is Oak Park with this. And then to a lesser extent, Loyola. Loyola, because we've seen them go 138 with Everett Andrew in the medley, and their free relays still perform well. Now, is that, the medley has to score if he's on it. Because otherwise you just totally wasted it, unless you win the free relay that he's not on, that was just a wasted swim for Everett Andrew. If you win the 200 relay without him anyway, then I guess there's no harm, no foul. But if you got second and you would have won with Andrew on the 200 free relay, that's why that's a tough decision. Otherwise, Maurer, the Maurer brothers are going to be on the free relays, and it sure looks like Lachlan Andrews got a good shot to be on the free relays as well. But it really comes down to, is it worth rolling the dice for Everett Andrew to go to the medley and instead of the 200 free relay for them? And the reason I say it's the biggest for Oak Park is because the relay that doesn't have Will Rate is, it's they got to answer questions they've never had to answer before, which is scoring at the state meet in an event that doesn't involve Will Rate, and that's their biggest hurdle right now. That was sort of what St. Charles North was facing last year. What stood between them and a state championship was, what could the 400 relay do without Will Meyer? I'm getting my Wills mixed up now. Without Will Meyer. And the reason I have a less question about them is because they pulled it off without him last year, and now they have a similar situation with Alec Filipovic, but they're basically going to be rolling with a bunch of seniors that have been through 4 years of this now, and they've proven it that they're not just relay swimmers but individual scorers at the state meet, and in most cases top 6 scorers. So for Oak Park, it's none of these guys have ever scored any points without Will Rate. And these relays have gone so fast with Will Rate that I think it really makes the most sense for Will Rate to swim 3 relays and the 200 free. If he goes a second individual race, I think the backstroke's what makes the most sense. The butterfly, was a total backfire last year, and that race didn't get any easier. And to be completely honest, the butterfly is just a chock full of superstars every year. maybe more than any other race year in, year out for the last handful. And so, if you can put 3 relays in the top 6 and you can get a second place finish from Will Rate in the 200 free, now you're looking at points probably in the 80s, and then eventually this junior class is what a potential trophy for Oak Park is riding on, and how many points that those guys score individually is really what's going to determine how well they do. And if they come up big and score 20 plus individual points, they'll probably be right there for a trophy. If they don't, they won't. And most teams in most years that are trophy contenders, it comes down to something like that. There's not too many teams that have something like Loyola where, a bad meet for Luke Maurer is winning the 200 free and getting beat by Boyle in the 100, and he gets 29 individual points. Most teams don't have a stone cold lock like that, and so that's where for and why Loyola has less variance than Oak Park is because they don't just have that guy who's even better than Will Rate as a number 1. They have a number 2 who's a top 6 finisher as a returner, and then the best freshman in the state. So it's going to be interesting for these top teams to see what they do decision wise. Nequa last year was able to use Jimmy Sinise in the medley. You would assume with the losses that they suffered, that they're not going to mess around this year. Now if they decide that it's not even worth him swimming the 100 free, now that's different. Now he can go 50 free in 3 relays. But if they think the 100 free hasn't been pretty for Sinise, but guys are different when they taper and put that suit on. And so if Chad Allen, thinks it's best to put his 2 horses in 2 individual swims, clearly Boyle is going to be in 2 individuals. I obviously haven't picked to win the 50. But, these are the other schools that are more the dark horse trophy contenders because, they've got top 2s or whatever it may be, top 3s that may have to carry somebody that's never even been to state before. And that's the case when you're looking at Nequa and Wabanzi, last year's second and third place trophy winners. We've talked about the loss of Doherty and what that's done to him, and that's put him in a situation where Lucas Conrad's going to have to be the medley backstroker from the looks of it. And, the cool thing is when you talk to them, talk to their team, like they've got a lot of confidence that that's something that he's fully capable of. I say I'm nervous about it, not for him, but for anybody, because usually it's something that can catch up to you, because you never know how much rest you're going to get from the medley to the 200 free. Now at Evanston, it should in theory be a little longer because you're going to have 1 or 2 extra heats depending on how many total entries there are, because it's 6 lanes compared to 8 lanes, and you get a warm down pool. So it is a little bit of an easier proposition to do it at Evanston as opposed to New Trier. And going forward, there'll be even less hesitation if state's being held at this new pool that should be a 50-meter 10-lane palace. Where you have a full warm down pool. But those are the things that these teams have to decide. The calculated risks: are we bagging relays? Are we taking our stars out of an individual race? For the most part, if you're unsure, you should let it ride with your star swimming an individual race, because there's nothing worse than catching a 13th in a relay when you could have got whatever it is, 12 points individually from that kid, which is, almost like a seventh place relay on their own, because the kid that didn't have the experience didn't show up, and that's the question for these teams. Nequa, if you really think about it, like I really haven't thought about their medley much, because I just don't think they're going to go for it. But I mean, how bad can it really be? Nequa's usually a team that's got decent depth. We know Sinise was on their medley last year and went 23 in the backstroke. We've seen them go breaststroke this year. We know they could put Boyle on the end to go 20 flat, or whatever it would end up being, and the other two guys can't be that bad, that relay wouldn't score. But again, is it worth it to take Boyle out of the 100 free, where in all likelihood he's going to get 16 or 13? That basically means you got to be top 7 for that to sort of work itself out in a positive light. And again, that's just not something that you would take as a potential state title away from somebody for what you're hoping is a 6th place relay. So these are, I think, the most interesting things to look for with these top teams as we get towards the sectional. Tomorrow, I'm going to go to the Mattia Valley Invitational, and kind of the next couple weeks. Again, the West Suburban is doing this weird Friday night conference meet, so I'm going to try and make that at York next week, and then on Saturday try to make Catholic Leagues at Fenwick at 10 a.m. So kind of back to the old days when I was double dipping conference meets, but I was doing it all on Saturday. In this case, I'll be doing it over 2 days, and then my usual trip to the CSL South before back to the Naperville sectional, and then we got state at Evanston. We're really in the stretch run. Kids that are shaking for conference are already tapering. Basically we're in their first half of their taper this week, and so nerves, excitement. I always hated. We always had an Evanston Lake Forest tri-meet the Saturday before conference, and I remember being halfway through my taper a couple times at that meet and just feeling all wrong, and then feeling really good a week later. And so that's not something that these top guys have to worry about, but for the majority of us, for us normal people out there that aren't the cream of the crop, I was back then, and they are right now, a week away from shaving down and tapering fully, and that's another thing. I usually don't think about this in advance. I advocate for everyone to shave their head and not spend $80 on a cap. I just thought that was one of the best things about the end of the year, was the bonding experience of shaving your head, and you're just getting ready to go to war with your buddies, and it's just part of the ritual. And I feel like I mean, maybe there's other things that have taken the place of that. I just feel like a small bit of the camaraderie has to be lost when you're not getting together to shave heads. So the long and the short of it is, I encourage anybody who's on the fence, shave your head. It's all part of it. And then, if you're a crazy person like I was and your parents don't care, grow your hair out for the next year until you shave it again. That was also part of the fun. So next time we'll be doing week 1 conference previews and talking about any big times from the last weekend of regular season meets statewide. This is about to be the best time of the year for a lot of people, and we'll be covering it here at bourbonquetics.com.